everybody, so for today's video I am using the Pierce Tag Stacks and Heart Stacks Dynamics from MFT, and I lined both of them up onto my Big Shot because I always like to cut as many things as possible with each pass that I do. It just saves time. So I'm using Wild Cherry and Snow Cone cardstock for my tag, so I ran that through first and got those done and out of the way. And then for my next pass, I am using the Banner Greetings Dynamics, the Let It Snowflake Dynamics, and the Snowflake Splendor Dynamics. And there is a method to my madness. So I'm using craft cardstock for the banner and one of the snowflakes, and then just white cardstock for the Snowflake Splendor. So again, run that through, get those out of the way, and then finally I'm using a piece of snow cone felt, and I've already got a video on my channel using felt with steel rule dies like this. Sometimes you need a shim, like a piece of cardstock, different things like that. Lately I've been finding I don't need that with my Big Shot. I just run it back and forth a few times to make sure I cut it really well, and it works like a charm. So with something like this, like a snowflake, you have to be really, really careful because it's so small. It makes the felt really flimsy, and it's really easy to tear off parts of the snowflake. So once that's done, I'm going to set all that aside and go on to stamping the actual tag. So I'm using the new Sophisticated Snowflakes. Sorry, it's really late. I can't think straight. I'm using the Sophisticated Snowflakes stamp set, and I'm inking it up with the Sweet Tooth Pigment ink. And I'm only stamping the top and the bottom part of the tag because the rest of it's going to be covered by the heart, so there's no point stamping something you're not going to see anyway. So I chose two of the snowflakes from the set and just inked them up with the Sweet Tooth ink and then stamped them onto the tag. And if you wanted them to be more pronounced and to pop a little bit more, you could emboss them with white embossing powder, but I wanted it to be more subtle. They're a little harder to see in pictures and on camera here, but in real life you can kind of see just a nice little bit of snowflakes on the snow cone cardstock. So once that was done, I'm going to use one of the Banner Greeting stamps, and I'm going to ink it up again with just the Sweet Tooth ink, and I'm going to stamp it onto that die cut banner on the craft cardstock. So once I've got that stamped, I'm going to use, for this one, I'm going to use my white embossing powder because I wanted this to kind of pop. And when you're using something like this that's already been die cut, so there's not a lot of room to hold it without smearing it, that's where tweezers come in really handy. So I just poured the embossing powder over the stamped area first, and then I just grabbed my reversible tweezers and was able to hold on to a little piece where there was no stamped image. So then that way also I can emboss this without burning my fingers. But you also need to be really careful, FYI, when you're embossing something like this and using metal tweezers, is the metal can get really, really hot, so just make sure to be really careful. And then yeah, just set that down, let that cool off. And then I'm going to go on to the heart, and I couldn't not use the new wood grain background stamp. I want to use this on everything. I just love it. So I inked it up with Wild Cherry ink and then put the heart where I wanted it. And I recommend using a piece of scrap paper rather than what I did. I got ink all over myself, but I can't help myself. And red ink is bad for this. Like, it just gets everywhere. But yeah, usually it works better to have a piece of scrap paper just to keep yourself from getting ink everywhere, but it's fine. It washes off eventually. So once I've got that stamped, I'm just going to use some adhesive right down the middle of the heart because that's the only part that's going to be adhered to the tag itself. And I used the largest of those Pierce Tag Stacks dies. And then for the Snowflake Splendor, I just used the tip of my scissors because they're fine enough to pop that right out of the die. So kind of figured out where I wanted everything to go, and then I grabbed a couple of Wild Cherry buttons and then some hemp cord. I really like MFT's hemp cord, by the way. It's just thinner than any other hemp I've ever used, so it's really nice for threading through buttons or sewing onto cards, all that kind of stuff. Like, I can thread it through a needle with not much problems, whereas my other hemp, which I'm not even sure where I got it, but it's way too thick to do this with, so I love this stuff. So yeah, I threaded it through the front of one of the buttons and then tied it into a bow on the back, and then I always just pinch it really tightly while I'm pulling the bow into place so that you're not just undoing it and having to redo it over and over again. So once I was happy with the size of the bow, I'm just going to trim off the ends. And then I'm going to thread the second button with the hemp again, but this time rather than tying it in a bow, I'm just pulling both ends in the same direction. And then I'm just going to use a red line adhesive dot. You could use hot glue as well for something like this. I really like the red line because it's super, super strong and it's just way faster than hot glue. But yeah, use the dot, which happened to be the perfect size for these buttons, peeled off the back, and then just adhere that to the top of the tag so that I've got some hemp cord to use to tie onto whatever gift I want it for. And then finally I'm going to attach my little snowflake that I all die cut. So added the white snowflake first, and that's why I chose this Snowflake Splendor one, because it's large enough and was solid enough to make the other two kind of stand out, because otherwise they were just kind of blending into the heart too much and you just didn't notice them as much. So to adhere the felt one, I just used another adhesive dot and applied that, and then just pressed it right down onto the die cut cardstock one. Since it's got the hole in the middle, it just worked perfectly. And then peeled off the backing to that and used that to adhere the other little die cut craft snowflake. Sorry if you can hear that snuffling, I've got little munchkins sleeping on my shoulder right now. So got that done, and then used one more adhesive dot to adhere the button, and that was it for the little snowflake. And then finally I just added a bunch of dimensionals to the back of the banner, peeled off those and added that to my tag, and that's all there was to it. So this could totally be for any occasion during the winter, like a birthday or thinking of you sort of a gift, not just Christmas. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, there'll be a link below to my blog with links to the supplies used, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!